Have you ever met someone who didn't just hurt people, but seemed to enjoy it? I'm not talking about normal ego or even typical narcissism. I'm talking about that moment when you suddenly realize something is wrong here, like the person in front of you has crossed an invisible line. Carl Jung warned us about this. When the shadow is ignored long enough, it doesn't disappear, it takes over. And once that happens, the narcissist doesn't just want attention anymore. They want power, control, and sometimes destruction. If you've ever felt confused, drained, or quietly afraid after dealing with someone like this, stay with me till the end, because what I'm about to share might explain things you've never been able to put into words. And listen, if this hits close to home, don't just watch in silence. Drop a comment and tell me what you noticed first, because your experience matters here. And if you want content that opens your eyes instead of feeding you lies, you already know what to do. Subscribe, and let's decode these minds together. When we talk about the shadow fully taking control, we're not talking about a small personality flaw or a bad mood anymore. This is something much deeper. And Carl Jung explained it in a way that still feels unsettling today. The shadow is the part of the personality that holds everything a person refuses to face about themselves: anger, envy, greed, cruelty, and the hunger for power. In a healthy person, these darker impulses are recognized, managed, and integrated with awareness. But in a narcissist, the shadow is denied for years. They don't see themselves as flawed. They see themselves as special, superior, or misunderstood. So instead of dealing with their darkness, they push it down, hide it behind charm, intelligence, confidence, or even spirituality. And for a long time, this mask works. People around them think they're strong, inspiring, or just a little intense. But the problem with burying the shadow is that it doesn't stay buried forever. It grows stronger in silence, feeding on denial, until one day it no longer needs permission to come out. When that moment arrives, something changes in a way you can feel but may not immediately understand. The narcissist stops pretending to be kind when no one is watching. Their words become sharper, their actions colder, and their reactions less emotional and more deliberate. This is where cruelty shifts from being reactive to intentional. Earlier, they might have hurt people during moments of anger or insecurity, then justified it as stress or misunderstanding. But now, the harm is calculated. They say things they know will cut deep. They expose vulnerabilities that were once shared in trust. They withhold affection, respect, or support on purpose, not because they are overwhelmed, but because they want to see the effect. There is a quiet satisfaction in watching others shrink, doubt themselves, or lose emotional balance. And that is one of the most frightening signs that the shadow is no longer in the background, it's in charge. What makes this stage especially dangerous is that the narcissist often feels more powerful than ever. There is no inner conflict holding them back. Guilt fades, shame disappears. Empathy becomes something they understand intellectually but no longer feel emotionally. From their perspective, the world becomes divided into winners and losers, controllers and controlled. Anyone who challenges them is seen as an enemy. Anyone who submits is seen as weak. Relationships stop being emotional connections and turn into arenas where dominance is tested. This isn't chaos to them, it feels like clarity. Jung warned that when the shadow possesses the personality, the person believes they have finally become their true self. In reality, they have lost it. You may notice that their stories change too. They rewrite past events in ways that always place them as the victim or the hero. If someone was hurt by them, that person is now crazy, jealous, or deserved it. Accountability becomes impossible because admitting wrongdoing would mean confronting the shadow again, and they have already chosen the easier path, becoming it. This is why conversations with such individuals feel draining and confusing. Logic doesn't land, emotional appeals don't work. You're not talking to someone who wants understanding, you're facing someone who wants control over the narrative and over you. Another unsettling aspect is how calm they can appear while causing harm. There's no explosive anger, no loss of control. Instead, there's patience, timing, and precision. They wait for the right moment to embarrass, undermine, or isolate. They observe weaknesses the way a predator observes movement. This is not accidental behavior, it's the shadow acting without resistance. And because narcissists already struggle with self-reflection, this stage can last for years, sometimes a lifetime, unless something forces a confrontation with reality. And even then, many resist it to the very end. For the people around them, the confusion often comes from remembering who the narcissist used to be, or at least who they appeared to be. You may keep hoping for that version to return, telling yourself they're stressed, wounded, or misunderstood. But once the shadow has fully taken control, the mask rarely comes back in a genuine way. Any kindness shown is usually strategic, not sincere. It's used to regain access, rebuild influence, or reset the power dynamic. This is why understanding this concept is so important. It helps you stop personalizing the cruelty. You realize that what you're experiencing is not a communication problem, not a relationship issue, and not something you can fix with patience or love. Jung believed that ignoring the shadow doesn't make a person good, it makes them dangerous. And when you recognize this shift in someone, the most important step is awareness. Awareness gives you clarity. Clarity gives you boundaries. And boundaries are often the only real protection when dealing with a personality that has stopped fighting its own darkness and has decided to live from it instead.
When empathy is replaced by cold calculation, the change is subtle at first, almost invisible. And that's what makes it so disturbing. This isn't a situation where someone feels overwhelmed or emotionally shut down because of pain or trauma. This is different. This is a deliberate inner shift where emotions are no longer used to connect with people, but to analyze them. A narcissist at this stage doesn't stop understanding feelings. In fact, they often become better at reading them. They can sense fear, hope, attachment, and insecurity with surprising accuracy. But instead of responding with care, they store this information like data. Every reaction you give them becomes a lesson. Every weakness you reveal becomes leverage. This is what strategic emptiness looks like, not a lack of feeling, but a choice to replace feeling with control. In earlier stages, a narcissist may still react emotionally. They might lash out, sulk, or seek reassurance when their ego is threatened. But when empathy disappears, those reactions are replaced with patience and planning. They no longer need immediate validation because they're playing a longer game. They watch how long it takes you to respond to a message, what tone makes you anxious, what words make you doubt yourself. They learn when you're strongest and when you're most vulnerable. And once they understand this pattern, they begin to move with precision. The harm they cause is not impulsive, it's timed. They don't attack randomly. They wait for moments when you are tired, hopeful, or emotionally open. That's when their words land the deepest. What's unsettling is how calm they remain while doing this. There's no visible anger, no emotional explosion. On the surface, they may appear reasonable, even kind, but underneath, there's a quiet detachment. Your pain doesn't interrupt them. Your confusion doesn't slow them down. Apologies, if offered, feel hollow because they're designed to reset the situation, not repair it. This is why many people describe feeling like they're talking to a wall, or worse, like they're being studied. You sense that something is off, that your emotions are being handled rather than shared, and that instinct is usually right. As this pattern continues, relationships lose their humanity. Conversations turn transactional, affection becomes conditional, support is given only when it serves a purpose. If you're useful, you're kept close. If you're struggling, questioning, or no longer compliant, you become a problem to manage. At this point, the narcissist doesn't see people as individuals with inner worlds. They see roles. Someone is the admirer, someone is the caretaker, someone is the enemy, someone is disposable. And once you're placed into one of these roles, it's very hard to move out of it because they are no longer relating to who you are, they're relating to what you provide. This is also why remorse disappears. Remorse requires emotional identification with another person's pain, but in a mindset ruled by calculation, pain is simply an outcome, not a concern. If someone gets hurt, the narcissist justifies it as necessary, deserved, or irrelevant. They may even sound logical while doing so, explaining their behavior in calm, rational terms that make you question your own reaction. This creates a deep sense of self-doubt in the people around them. You start wondering if you're too sensitive, too emotional, or misunderstanding things. Meanwhile, they remain steady, controlled, and unbothered, which only increases their sense of power. Over time, this dynamic can erode a person's sense of self. When your feelings are consistently met with analysis instead of empathy, you begin to feel unseen. You may try harder to explain yourself, to prove your worth, or to earn basic understanding. But nothing changes because the goal was never connection. The goal was influence. And influence works best when the other person is uncertain, emotionally invested, and still hoping for fairness. Understanding this shift is important because it helps you stop expecting emotional safety where it no longer exists. This isn't about miscommunication or emotional distance that can be repaired with effort. It's about a mindset that has replaced human connection with strategy. Once you see that, the confusion starts to clear. You realize that the coldness you're experiencing is not accidental and it's not something you caused. It's a calculated way of relating to the world, one that values control over compassion, outcomes over people, and power over truth. When destruction begins to bring them satisfaction, something deeply unsettling has already taken place inside the narcissist. This is no longer about defending their ego or reacting to a perceived threat. This is a stage where chaos itself becomes energizing. Instead of feeling disturbed by conflict, loss, or emotional breakdowns around them, they feel alive. Disorder sharpens their focus. Tension gives them purpose. Watching someone grow confused, anxious, or unstable doesn't trigger concern or reflection. It creates a quiet sense of fulfillment. What once might have caused guilt now feels justified, even rewarding. And this is where the danger truly escalates, because destruction stops being an accident and starts becoming a byproduct they're comfortable with, sometimes even drawn to. At this point, the narcissist often positions themselves as the center of every emotional storm. Arguments grow more intense, situations become unnecessarily complicated. Peace feels boring to them, while conflict feels meaningful. You may notice that whenever things start to calm down, they introduce tension again, an accusation, a reminder of past mistakes, a subtle insult disguised as honesty. It's not random. Calmness threatens them because it removes their sense of control and importance. Chaos, on the other hand, keeps everyone emotionally focused on them. When others are struggling, defending themselves, or trying to make sense of what went wrong, the narcissist feels powerful. Their inner emptiness is temporarily filled by external damage. What makes this especially hard to understand is that they rarely look cruel while doing it. Often they appear composed, reasonable, even victimized. They may frame destruction as truth-telling, tough love, or necessary consequences. But if you pay attention to patterns instead of words, you'll see that people around them consistently end up drained, doubting themselves, or falling apart. Careers are undermined, relationships are fractured, confidence erodes, and through it all, the narcissist remains strangely energized, almost refreshed. This is because destruction has become a source of psychological nourishment. It gives them a sense of impact, relevance, and dominance that they can't generate internally. There is also a shift in how they respond to pain. In earlier stages, they might deny causing harm or avoid seeing its effects. Now, they notice it, and they don't look away. They watch reactions closely. They remember what hurts the most. They may even revisit wounds long after they've healed, reopening them just to see if the pain is still there. This isn't sadism in a dramatic sense. It's colder than that. It's curiosity mixed with entitlement. They believe they have the right to disrupt others if it serves their emotional needs. And because they've already detached from empathy, there's nothing inside them pushing back against this behavior. People caught in this dynamic often feel like they're losing their footing. Nothing feels stable. Just when you think you understand the rules, they change them. Just when you feel secure, something is taken away. This instability is not a side effect, it's the environment where the narcissist feels most at home. Stability requires mutual respect and shared reality. Chaos allows them to rewrite reality whenever it suits them. In confusion, they lead. In pain, they position themselves as the authority. And when someone breaks under the pressure, they interpret it as proof of their own strength. What's most tragic is that the narcissist often mistakes this phase for growth or awakening. They feel more confident, more decisive, more real. Jung warned that when people identify fully with their darker impulses, they can feel empowered while actually becoming less human. The narcissist may believe they are finally being honest, fearless, or strong, when in reality, they are feeding a hunger that can never be satisfied. Destruction provides a temporary high, but it deepens the inner emptiness that caused it in the first place. So the cycle continues. More chaos is needed, more damage, more control. For those on the receiving end, understanding this shift can be both painful and freeing. Painful because it forces you to accept that the harm is not accidental or misunderstood. Freeing because it allows you to stop searching for fairness, closure, or empathy where none is being offered. You begin to see that the satisfaction they draw from destruction has nothing to do with your worth, your behavior, or your intentions. It comes from a broken inner system that feeds on imbalance. Recognizing this doesn't erase the damage, but it restores clarity. And clarity is often the first step to reclaiming stability in a dynamic designed to take it away.
When moral reality becomes completely distorted, you're no longer dealing with someone who shares the same understanding of right and wrong. This is not about differing opinions or personal values. It's a deeper collapse where ethical boundaries stop being external truths and start bending around the narcissist's needs. In this state, reality itself becomes flexible. Events are not remembered as they happened, but reshaped to protect their self-image. Harmful actions are reframed as misunderstandings, necessities, or even virtues. If someone is hurt, the narcissist doesn't ask whether they crossed a line. They ask why the other person couldn't handle it. Right and wrong no longer exist as shared reference points. They exist only as tools, used when convenient and discarded when not. One of the clearest signs of this distortion is how easily they rewrite the past. Conversations you clearly remember are denied or twisted. Promises are forgotten. Boundaries you set are reframed as attacks. Over time, this constant revision of reality creates deep confusion in the people around them. You begin to question your memory, your judgment, and even your values. Meanwhile,
The narcissist appears confident, certain, and unshaken. That confidence can be convincing, especially when delivered calmly. But it is not truth, it is control. By reshaping events, they maintain a world where they are always justified and never accountable. Justifying abuse becomes effortless at this stage. Cruel words are labeled as honesty. Manipulation is framed as leadership. Neglect is excused as independence. And if their behavior causes damage, they find a way to blame the victim. You were too sensitive. You misunderstood. You pushed them to act that way. This moral inversion is dangerous because it removes all internal limits. Without a stable sense of ethics, anything can be defended if it protects their identity or power. And because they believe their intentions are superior, they feel entitled to act without restraint. This sense of entitlement often carries a deeper belief that they are different from others, somehow chosen or above normal rules. They may see themselves as more intelligent, more aware, or more evolved, and therefore exempt from standards that apply to everyone else. This belief can appear subtle or overt, but it always leads to the same outcome, a lack of accountability. When someone believes they are exceptional, consequences feel unfair, criticism feels like an attack, and empathy feels optional. They are not simply breaking moral rules, they believe those rules were never meant for them. For the people around them, this ethical collapse is exhausting and destabilizing. You may try to appeal to fairness, facts, or shared values, only to find that none of it lands. That's because you're operating in a shared moral reality, and they are not. You're speaking a language they no longer recognize. This is often the moment when people feel the deepest sense of betrayal, not just because of what the narcissist did, but because of how completely they deny its meaning. There is no acknowledgement, no repair, no common ground. Understanding this distortion is important because it helps you stop expecting justice from someone who has abandoned it internally. It allows you to see that the confusion and self-doubt you feel are not signs of weakness, but natural responses to a reality that keeps shifting under your feet. Moral collapse doesn't announce itself loudly, it reveals itself quietly, through constant justification, denial, and superiority. And once you recognize it, you gain something powerful, the ability to step out of their distorted reality and return to your own sense of truth.
When a narcissist shifts from seeking validation to seeking domination, the entire dynamic changes. In the early stages of narcissism, admiration is the fuel. They want praise, attention, and reassurance. They want to be seen as impressive, special, or important. But when that need evolves into something darker, admiration is no longer enough. Approval feels weak. Compliments feel temporary. What they begin to crave instead is control. Control lasts longer. Control doesn't depend on others liking them. Control gives them certainty. And once domination becomes the goal, relationships stop being sources of affirmation and start becoming systems of power. At this stage, they are no longer interested in how others see them. They are interested in how others respond to them. Emotional reactions become more valuable than admiration. Fear, confusion, dependency, and obedience provide a deeper sense of influence than praise ever could. They want to shape how people feel, what they think, and how they act. This is why their behavior often becomes more invasive. They interfere with decisions that are not theirs to make. They question your judgment. They undermine your confidence slowly, over time, until you begin to doubt your own instincts. This isn't accidental. A person who doubts themselves is easier to control. Power over identity is one of the most damaging aspects of this shift. The narcissist may define who you are, what you're capable of, and what you deserve.
They assign labels that keep you small or dependent. If you succeed, they minimize it. If you struggle, they use it as proof of their superiority. Over time, you may find yourself living inside their version of you instead of your own. This is domination at a psychological level. It doesn't need constant aggression, it works through repetition, authority, and emotional pressure. What makes this phase especially destructive is how little regard they have for the cost. Relationships are sacrificed without hesitation. Trust is broken repeatedly. Reputations are damaged if they stand in the way of control. In extreme cases, they are willing to isolate others completely, cutting them off from support systems, opportunities, or self-belief. To them, these losses are acceptable collateral. The goal is not mutual growth or shared success. The goal is supremacy within the dynamic. If they feel powerful, the damage feels justified. Unlike validation, domination does not require consent. And that is why it is so dangerous. When someone no longer needs your approval, they no longer need your well-being either. Resistance is met with punishment. Independence is interpreted as betrayal. Boundaries are seen as threats. This is often when the narcissist becomes most aggressive or cold because control is slipping. And nothing triggers them more than the possibility of losing power over someone they once managed. Understanding this shift helps clarify why logic, reassurance, or empathy no longer work. You are not dealing with someone who wants to be admired or understood. You are dealing with someone who wants to win. And in their definition of winning, there must be a loser. Recognizing this allows you to stop engaging in a battle that was never about love, respect, or connection. It was about domination from the start. And the moment you see that clearly, you regain something they were trying to take: your autonomy.